think it's safe to say that there are few things more gratifying in life than to be understood. And it seems like that's kind of at the center of what a lot of people are doing. Because imagine going through your entire life without being understood, you know? Even if it's one person. Actually, it's probably at its best when it is one person. I mean, we all kind of have groups of people who understand us more or less, who we also understand. And when you're in a group together, it's kind of a group of understanding. That's what makes it what it is, you know? But in the end, there's always going to be one person who is the closest, who understands the most, and who you understand the most. Because each person can very easily be described as an entire universe unto themselves. And the collision of two people is not unlike the collision of two distinct realities. And there's always that boundary that keeps people separate, that keeps us wondering. The uncertainty there. Yet at the same time, there is a very intimate familiarity. And a substance that is highly known. That really does feel like home. I mean, imagine going through life without having a person that's kind of a home. And in my mind, such a circumstance is deeply romantic. Deeply. And I don't just see this universe or reality at large as blind forces acting upon each other, becoming more complex over time. I see an item that is also deeply romantic and not just efficient. Something that tends toward both efficiency and romance. Because it's in that situation that you find a full spectrum where you have both nothing and something, space and matter, waves and particles, yes and no, where everything can come from two opposing ends, where you can take the language of binary and turn it into infinite complexity. But on a long enough timeline, efficiency isn't enough. I think the universe yearns, or did yearn, to be seen and understood as well. I think that the same yearnings that human beings have, reality itself has. But it looks and seems different. I mean, the fact that we're here is a statement in and of itself about the reality that we came from. If we did indeed grow out of it, if we are indeed a continuation from the Big Bang, if we're a symptom of this system of balances, then how can we not be a reality understanding itself? There's just simply no other way to say it. That's exactly what it has to be. Even if there was a creator, that's why I've tended toward that explanation. It's not the only reason. I see purpose and definite meaning everywhere. But it's definitely one of them. It's one of the reasons why I say that the universe can be both top down and bottom up at the same time. And it kind of meets in the middle with fluctuations. Because you just see that everywhere. And if reality was just particles, then that's what I would say. If it was just waves, then that's what I would say. If it was just yes, then I would say that. And if it was just no, I would say that too. If it was just on and never off, then that's what I would say. But it just happens to be both. It happens to expand for a while and then contract. And quite literally, God only knows how many times that's happened. What universe number is this? 50? 14? A billion? How many times has this thing that seems to begin with a bang expanded to its maximum, started to contract, gone all the way back down to the smallest, most dense possible point conceivable, and how long did it stay that way? And how long before it expanded again? And what does that remind you of? It's exactly what we do. We are awake for a time, and we sleep for a time. It's exactly like us. It's difficult to not make a connection between the way the universe has large on-off cycles and we have on-off cycles. The way we seek to be understood and reality seeks to be understood. And then all of the things that we want or like from each other, reality seems to like and want from us. Do we not find beauty and appreciate? And then we make art heavily based off of what we see? Why? Why do we do that? And then we come along and we walk around the showroom with beautiful soft music playing in the background, you know? And then look at it and appreciate it. And you could say right at that exact point, that's what it's all about. That's the whole game, the whole show. And you live in your life, doing your thing, and then one day you run into somebody who just gets it, who understands. It's billions of people on Earth. Suddenly there's this one. And it's mutual. Oh, what are the odds? And suddenly these two realities can do something that is otherwise not possible. And it feels just as much like home as home can be. And honestly, if everybody was in such a state, I genuinely think the world would be far better off. It's like, why why deny that? If everybody had such stakes, I mean, I think we've done pretty well, considering. But yeah. And then you look at all the forces outside of us, and they can become known, measured in a lot of ways, used to turn material into work, intelligent work. Just like us. Just like our own psychological forces, our own emotional forces. The exact same thing is true. They can be comprehended and used as a charge to perform work in the world. Strong motivation comes from the living surge that is human sensation. And there are far more sensations than just emotions. We tend to think of it as solely emotions, but it's so much more than that. they're the clicks that come before logic, because reality tends to first do, and the symbols for it come later. And when we do the same thing, we do first without necessarily knowing exactly where it's headed, but we have some idea, kind of a gut instinct. We swing in the general direction of the ball, and we definitely try our hardest. We don't know exactly where it's going to go. We have something in mind. It would be perfect if we got a home run every time, but there are other directions the ball could go in that are also satisfying. There are some places we don't want it to go, and this is talking about baseball. And sometimes the balls go there. But it doesn't stop you from swinging again. If anything, you go away for a while and try to improve your swing. And it's not just it's not just for outcomes. It's also for the exact feeling of swinging the bat and making contact with the baseball, and the feeling you get when the crack of the ball and the bat hits your ear and it echoes and the ball starts to go out, and you start running and everybody's watching, and it's this sort of, here I am. It's always kind of a both logical, rational, cold, but also very hot and warm and sensation driven at the same time. Just like everything else all the time, just like reality itself. You can make arguments for its efficiency, because it is efficient, but you can also make arguments for its musical like nature. And honestly, there are a few things better than that connection, And it's interesting too how we absolutely need to know sometimes what happened, because it matters. Like if something happens to somebody that it's like you need to know what happened. The more information the better, even if it's terrible. There's so many stories of, people losing a loved one or something terrible happening to them, and they just don't know. And you'll hear them say, it's the not knowing that really gets to them. Because somehow having this information settled in you does something, It's almost like it's an open circuit that's incomplete, and it's just bleeding out energy, it's just bleeding out electricity into the environment that's not being put to good use, We like closed circuits, loops, because it can not only feedback, but it can continuously grow. And it's really the worst when you have an incomplete loop and there's an opening and things just kind of bleed out into the atmosphere. Happens to us all the time with a lot of different things. And we lose energy like that too, when you really think you know somebody. It's one of the worst things in the world for a person to trust somebody and think that they have this kind of circuit, this feedback thing, especially when it's two human beings. Because like I said, human beings are like universes unto themselves. And when you trust someone, you go through life kind of figuring out what sort of people are yours in a strange way, even though we're all humans, even though we're all alike, it's still very, very, very specific. The sort of people we can actually connect with. Even the sort of people we can support politically. It's not enough to just have somebody. It has to be a certain someone. you know, and who's to say who that is? When you know, but up until that point, it's a form of not knowing. It's a form of like having an open circuit, and it's a terrible thing for a person, because I really think that people are meant to be together. From my point of view as a heterosexual man, you know, I could have lived alone forever, because that bleeding out, I I plug it into reality itself, into learning, knowing, and sort of saying what I see. Philosophy. It can never replace a person, but it does do some amount of satisfying things, in terms of understanding. It's like, if there isn't somebody that I can have as a home like that, then I'll do my best to build it elsewhere, and that's kind of what we do. We can call it a lot of different things, but if we don't have somebody like that, then we tend to build something of our own in the world like that. But a person is irreplaceable. If you happen to find that in a person, like I said, when you find it, it really does kind of complete the ultimate circuit, if you want to put it that way. And it is circular and linear, as things are, and it just changes the way your whole life is experienced. Like I think of it as, you don't really experience time until that happens. If you were a man alone in the forest and you didn't know how you had gotten there, and you'd spent every single day hunting and fishing, maybe you build yourself a nice little place to live, you wake up every day, you eat, you look at the stars for a while, you don't travel that far beyond, because what if you travel to a place that has less of what you have currently, and you have everything you need? And really, it's kind of like a solitary haven. And every day, the sun goes up, the sun goes down, you fall asleep, you wake up, you look at the fire, maybe you build some things, you carve some things, you make some drawings. That's fine. That there's a certain sort of solitary satisfaction there. Maybe you can find some things out about the world. Maybe you can be a little bit inquisitive, find some things out about yourself. Okay. But what if one day you walk into the woods and you see a woman, and you've never seen anybody, this is the first person you've seen, and she happens to be very beautiful, and she's out there too in the forest, just kind of doing her thing. Suddenly, time starts. In the past, you've had days that you remember where certainly there were memorable events. Maybe the first time you discovered this, or maybe you had a near miss and you almost died once. But generally, time has been frozen for you until this day. And you approach each other in awe. You just have this unspeakable attraction. And this person understands more than anything could ever understand you and your situation, just by the way your faces look at each other. There's a comprehension happening now, and time effectively begins in this moment. And you would just approach each other and just grab each other by the hands and just be completely stunned. Your heart would be racing, and I'm sure you would make plans to meet there again the next day. And every day that you spent from that moment forward, time would be experienced differently. It's different when you have not only somebody that close to you, or somebody capable of being that close, who understands you, who is like a home, but it really does make this circuit where time is genuinely cataloged in you differently. Your experiences, the things you learn, maybe you actually expand beyond where you are now because you have some practical reason to do different things now. and you have children, and you see them grow day after day, year after year, and it catalogs time in a different way. It completely changes the entire meaning of your life. You move in a completely different direction, far, far more connected, far more satisfied, and understood by the world. If you're understood by at least one person truly, then you are understood by the world, by reality, for that matter. And that's all it takes, and that's all it should take. And you can never divide yourself up more than that, really. We can have great friends and very close people of all different kinds, but there is nothing like that one person. I promise you that, if you find it. And even if you don't, you probably know what I mean. You know. And it's not a theoretical thing, it's a thing that's stored within me, quite truthfully, and I've seen it all over. I've seen it many times in my own family as well. And it's an extension of the very same yearning this universe has as a whole. I genuinely think that it wants to be noticed, discovered. It wants to be known. This arrangement is laid out perfectly for that. Where we are right now on Earth, the way Earth is, it's a place aching to be known and understood, made useful, taken care of as well. Not just, it's not enough to just discover something and understand it, to take care of it too, to make it yours, to have a kind of mutual understanding. Understanding Earth is a fantastic thing, and you can believe that Earth understands us, of course. Whether we came from it or we were made for it, there is no place that understands humans more than Earth itself. And I'm not trying to give it some sort of mystical or magical backdrop, but to think of reality as a dead place is completely wrong. It's very much alive, and there's something about it that's highly conscious. And it's like I've said in the past, for me personally, there is some sort of central element to it somewhere, somehow. And it would be interesting to know or have a certain sequence of words that accurately describes reality in a single statement. It seems like that's, like the ultimate thing that we're trying to do, at least collectively, And we've come so far now with our rearranging of atoms. And we've come into the digital, which has helped say quite a bit about reality too. That we are making our own intelligence in our own image. And we're trying to figure out a way to do useful things, to do work, to further rearrange atoms in a way that is humane, which is an interesting concept. The more we know about each other, the more humane we become. The less we know, the less humane we can be. If you want to treat somebody poorly, you have to unknow them, or in some way tell yourself something about them that knows them in a way that enables you to treat them poorly. So the more we know about Earth, the more we know about reality, the more we know about ourselves, the more humane we become. And it's a balance too, because we can't lose that part of ourself that is kind of a forward thrust as well. You can't become so docile that you stop making progress or hand it over to somebody else or something else. So it's a balance. Even as a man, you shouldn't lose that part of you that's a complete caveman or an animal or a beast, which sounds crude to say, but you can't lose that. But at the same time, you can be modern with modern sensibilities and a strong and true intelligence, wisdom. But it's a balance, you see, of opposing forces. Opposing forces that are made up themselves of a number of intermixed and highly complex lesser forces. But generally, they are those two that oppose each other that come together as one process. That is you, a man. Should never lose that. But it's a delicate thing. Like I said, it's a balance. Some people go too hard one way or too hard the other way, and sometimes you have to be either or. But in the end, you rest back at a balance. And it's less of a straight line with a middle. It's more like an orb with a middle, coming from all directions, that you can still make divisible, like a brain. It's more than two-dimensional, it's three. Maybe more, but at least in my mind, it looks at least like 3 dimensions. And it's at that point that you can be what you need to be in this world. And people feel inadequate in all sorts of different ways. I feel like it is absolutely possible to lose something along the way. And that is the role of wisdom, to know what to keep and how to use it. Have access to it. You want to have access to elements of yourself. And as you learn new things, you don't want to discard old parts of yourself, even ancient parts. You want them to be transmuted by the new, made better, And I'm glad to be alive at this time. I'm glad to be able to use the language of science and the information of science and what we found out to talk about philosophy. To me, it's the greatest thing. And I do wonder what Socrates might have said, being able to read the papers and books and see the demonstrations and the images of what we've uncovered since him. I would wonder what his final statement would be as compared to my own. I would wonder if he would find it reasonable to conclude that there is indeed a centralized architect who built into the system self-intelligence. Things like evolution, self-replication over vast spans of time, so that you may include both evolution and creation. That way you can have these two things that seem to be opposites, that people seem to want to grab onto and make it either or, when it's only complete if you have both. I mean, how can you really argue against that? Especially when it's become pretty common knowledge that the universe is expanding and will eventually stop and it'll contract again. How do you look at that and not see similarities to even a human life? We expand for a certain period of time and then we contract and die. And then another human is born, expands, reaches a kind of maximum, contracts and then dies, just like everything else. That's what life itself is. It's a kind of seed, tiny little seed, just like the universe, that explodes out into the world. And then it contracts and dies. And it has all these iterations, but each iteration is different, even though it's the same basic stuff. And human beings here, just on this little spot, Earth, I mean, if you ever take the time and you have any interest in learning about the solar system, our particular solar system, and just space in general, it's kind of nerdy shit, but I promise you it teaches you so much about yourself. And it genuinely changes how you experience the world on a daily basis. It changes how your senses function. The expansion of your brain and your nervous system, and the ability for your own conscious attention to reach and access different parts of your mind greatly changes how you experience the world and other people on a daily basis. It changes how you speak. It changes what you know before you know it. It changes how you interpret your own memory and history, and it changes what things come to mind as events unfold. And this universe wants to be understood. It's dying to be understood. And it offers every possibility for us to do that. And also, us as human beings want to be understood. We love that feeling when we have that one person who does understand us so well, who we understand so well, continues to do so. And they don't let us down. Maybe they make mistakes from time to time. But generally, that feeling of becoming known by somebody who is yours is the place that we want to be. And if we aren't, then we tend to put ourselves into different pursuits. But I feel like sometimes that can get out of control. When you put so much of your own life force into things that aren't another person, singular, it can be difficult because it doesn't fill you up in the same way as another person does. It's like a closed circuit, but on the other end of that circuit, it's like it's full of a number of complications and twists and turns that are routed through a number of different items before it comes back to you, and it doesn't always come back to you. Sometimes it comes back weaker, or even too strong, or even it comes back as something foreign, and you're reluctant to even re-involve yourself in this thing you've invested your time so much into, especially if that thing ends up being not what you thought it was. Because if you want to talk about blind forces, the yearning for a human being to be understood, aiming that somewhere else that isn't a human being, is pretty damn close to a blind force. And it's good to have things beyond people like that to comprehend and understand yourself, but we should know what that is too at the same time. It's helpful to know what's happening there, because wisdom, like I said, is the ability to harbor these things in mind and have your own sensations adequately guide them. And I would consider anybody fortunate who discovers such a person, And make no mistake, that's really the peak of human being, is, yes, being able to understand reality, but also another person. It's there that you will find the true dynamics of reality, of time itself, and even space. to be connected with somebody like that changes. It just changes everything, you know.